Welcome to another installment of USCA CEO Corner. I'm Melissa Brown, and I'm joined here today with the Association of Edison Illuminating Company CEO Steve Hauser. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about what your organization does?
Um, sure. So AEIC goes back 140 years. It was started by Thomas Edison when he was initially forming his company, his electric companies. That's part of why it's called the Edison Illuminating Companies in our title. Back then, there was a few utilities, not all that many, right? It was very early in the industry. But Thomas Edison had this vision of being able to share what he called the knowledge of one becomes the knowledge of all, right? So he would get his executives, in particular the engineering side of these companies, together and compare notes about what's working, what's not working, what challenges they have, if they found something new that they want to share with the others, right? So that was the original vision, and pretty much we've kept that vision all this 140 years, right?
Mhm.
It's grown up and down. Right now we're in a growth spurt a bit where we've added some additional members and we've got more committees active now than we have. But even back then, in the early 1900s, they established several committees, technical committees, working committees that are still in existence today. So, a power generation committee, a load research committee, a metering committee. You might not think that meters went all the way back to those days, but they had to figure out how they were going to charge customers for their electricity, and so they came up with some fairly simple meters way back then. So that committee still meets today. So there's decades of history and legacy that we try to preserve as an organization.
Great. So you said it was founded in 1885. How does the organization maintain its historical legacy of leading the way while navigating the most rapid rate of change the electricity industry has seen in decades?
Well, so that's I was starting to answer that earlier, I guess, because we've kept these committees that started way back then, and we've gradually expanded into new issues. So as new challenges face the industry, we might decide to establish a new committee or subcommittee or working group around a particular issue. A good example of that's wildfire, which the industry wasn't dealing with 100 years ago or even 10 years ago so much, right? But now it's a real issue, and so we've established a working group around wildfire where the utilities that are most impacted or at least have the highest risk of wildfire can get together and talk about what they're learning, what's working, what's not working, and so on.
Oh, yes. And you have noted that industry pressure is escalating due to high visibility news and potential misinformation. As CEO, how are you positioning your organization to provide clarity and coordination for utilities facing these external pressures?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by misinformation, but there's certainly utilities are in the news way more today than they were 10 years ago, maybe, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of that has to do with the rapid growth,
Mm-hmm.
and the growth is largely due to the data center, the
Mm-hmm.
uptick in data centers.
And like
Uh,
just to say, like some people might view misinformation as, oh, big, bad, scary utilities. That.
okay, okay. Well, data centers are clearly driving a lot of the news right now, and there's both positive and negative news that comes out of that. I mean, I will say data centers aren't new. They've been around for more than a decade. Some utilities um, hosted data centers, more than 10 years ago. They have gotten bigger and more prominent or more popular, if you will. And so utilities are certainly having to grapple with how do I add capacity to my system, capacity meaning power generation, transmission, distribution. And those are issues that's their job is to face that. Now it may be a little bit different in the sense that it's growing more rapidly than in the past. I'm at the neighborhood conference this week, the National Association of Regulatory Commissioners, and yesterday the a guy from the Department of Energy's Energy Information Agency was talking about the trends, right? And he was looking back at the last 15 years or so and showing how the growth in the industry was pretty flat, maybe 1 or 2% growth, and now all of a sudden it's 8, 10%, maybe more in some places, and so that certainly creates challenges. What we do is allow our utilities to, um, executives, senior leadership in the utilities to get together and share, what's working and not working in terms of if they have to scale up and add new transmission lines, what kind of challenges are they facing with supply chain, for instance, has been a big issue. So we offer a way for them to collaborate on these issues and to learn from each other and to sort of maintain that original vision of Thomas Edison that the knowledge of one becomes the knowledge of all.
Great. And your organization is described as a place where leaders from most utilities collaborate. And what's an example of a challenge that was solved through this peer-to-peer knowledge sharing um, that's like more common in that people can find in your organization?
Yeah, so that's a great question. But we actually have so many different examples. It's like it seems like every month we're coming up with new examples. The one that always sticks in my mind is dealing with storms, right? So if um, hurricanes are not new, but the frequency of hurricanes or wildfires or storms or polar vortexes that we on the East Coast have been dealing with recently have been more frequent and more, maybe more impactful. So we have a storm, we call it our storm team. We have utilities that are most impacted by these storms that get together and they share, again, best practices. It's like, oh, we learned how to dispatch crews in a better way, more efficiently. We can track equipment better for in whatever way. So all of those best practices, especially over the last decade, I'll say, have been put together into a best practices guidelines, if you will, that we can share with any utility. It's not confidential. We're trying to provide that kind of information to the industry as a whole. But the utilities that have been involved, of course, they have a lot of ownership over this because they've discussed and debated, what really is the best practice we should maintain in order to do a better job, get power restored more quickly, and so on. It's been a tremendous success.
Great, glad to hear. And your recent 2025 annual meeting theme was elevating excellence. What are your biggest personal takeaways?
From the annual meeting,
Mhm.
um, that's a great question. I need to think about this one a little bit because
Okay.
we in our annual meeting, it's the only time where we actually bring some of our key vendors in. They sponsor our annual meeting. And so while we still focus on the peer-to-peer exchange between and among utilities, we also bring the equipment people in, the GEs and Siemens and Mitsubishis and Emersons and so on. I think one of my takeaways this year is how much or how rapidly the industry is changing, partly to address the need for growth in the AI data center space. But AI is also having a big impact on how they actually do business, right?
Mhm.
So whether it's creating robots that go out and do inspections that are difficult for a human being to do, or in some cases, they are using AI to train call centers or other systems within a utility that are always a challenge to kind of maintain, and they can use AI systems to do a better job of implementing their responsibilities.
Great. So the Ops Center, the Center for Operational Excellence, recently announced four founding organizations to support the program, including Emerson, Simon, Stellar Energy, and Quanta. How will these industry partners specifically help bridge the growing skills gap and digital maturity
Yeah.
across the sector?
Yeah, so this is a new thing that we're doing because AEIC, for all its life, its decades, has been a utility only organization. We don't allow vendors to participate or be a member of our organization, right? So when I took over 5 years ago, one of my initiatives was to create a sister organization we call the AEIC Center for Operational Excellence. It's a C3, which some people know what that means in tax terms, but it really allows us to have the flexibility to accept donations from non-utility companies or organizations. So in uh, our first donation, if you will, it wasn't really a donation, was from the Department of Energy. We started a contract with them a couple of years ago that still persists. We do some really great work with our workshops in cooperation with the Department of Energy. But then this year, we reached out to some of our key partners and said, are you willing to put some investment into this organization to help it grow? Because we think there's a huge benefit not just to the utilities, but to the vendor as well. So we were fortunate to have these four companies step up and say, yes, we'd like to be founding donors. We'd like to expand what you're doing. So we're actually hosting a workshop this week. It's in Austin, Texas, and it's on load forecasting. And you know what we see is the opportunity is to help educate the incoming workforce, if you will, the new workforce as they mature into the system, certainly, but also look at new technologies and techniques and models to help us with certain things like load forecasting.
Great. And speaking of those workshop
Yeah.
series, why was load forecasting chosen as a primary anchor for tying together utility plannings and operations this coming year?
Well, if I haven't said this already, I'll reemphasize or say it and emphasize it. What we do as an organization, whether it's at AEIC itself or the Center for Operational Excellence, it's all driven by what the utilities want to do. So these are not decisions I make. I don't come to them and say, we should do this. They come to me and say, this is an area that we really need more emphasis on. We need to create some workshops or forums in order to exchange information. It's typically led by two or three or four utilities that are already talking to each other, but they want us to help grow it, if you will, add more utilities, convene these meetings like these workshops. And so, frankly, it was some of our utilities came to us and said, look, we a decade or more ago, we were running our system with very little data. Now we have a lot of data, whether it's from a SCADA system or from an AMI system or other sensors. We could talk all day about the new sensors that are being deployed throughout the system, and sensors generate data. So the utilities are awash in data. And so the load forecasting is an opportunity to figure out how do we manage that data in a way to use, create really valuable information, make better decisions, make faster decisions. So instead of using models that may be outdated or not very well informed by real data, now we have data to inform those models and decisions. And we have all sorts of examples of utilities that are doing such a wonderful job of managing their system in almost real time because of all the data that they have.
Oh, yes. And now, just some questions on technology and innovation, the topic on everyone's minds at You've mentioned with the rise of AI, machine learning, and advanced data and analytics, how is your organization helping its members and companies avoid the term, or some people use as vendor lock-in when scaling their digital infrastructure?
Yeah, vendor lock-in. Um, we try not to use that word. There's certainly still some historical issues where a utility has chosen a certain software, certain technologies to implement, and then they kind of have to use that going forward, right? Um, I I think the new AI systems, the new data collection systems and stuff are much more universal now than they have been in the past. There's more interoperability is a very key word that's been worked on for now several years, but it's starting to sort of populate throughout the system where you can interchange technologies because they're designed to a certain protocol, standard protocol that works. We don't do the protocols. We don't do the standards. That's more like IEEE or IEC and some of the other organizations that develop these standards. But it's definitely moving in that direction. It's exciting to see that. Um, I was trying to think of one other thing with regard to technology. I'll stop. I can't remember what it was.
All good. The recent 2025 achievement awards highlighted projects like virtual power plants and AI powered monitoring. How does AEIC ensure that these purpose-built solutions are shared so they can benefit the industry worldwide rather than staying siloed in one region?
Well, again, that's really the main purpose of our organization is to make sure that information gets shared. When you talk about our achievement awards, again, I joined the organization 5 years ago, and the achievement awards have been going on for years, right? But even in the last 5 years, I've noticed a big shift from more I call them hardware technology projects to to the last couple of years where they're almost all software AI based projects. Part of that's I'll call it a generational shift. The young people coming into the organization, they're anxious to use these new tools, and they're very good about figuring out how to use AI based systems to address problems that maybe previous generations, like my generation, didn't even realize could be dealt with AI. So it's been really fun to watch that shift. But our committees and our various collaboration meetings that we hold all include these same achievement award technologies. The same companies, the same people get to talk to each other and when we announce the awards at our fall meeting, of course, there's you know um, 60 or 80 different utilities in the audience, and so if they're interested in a particular project that one of their peers has been working on, they walk right up and say, "Let's talk," right?
Exactly. And just looking ahead to the future, in
Mhm.
2026, it was introduced the challenge of the and balancing growth, new technology, reliability, and affordability. How does your role as CEO support the operational efforts to manage these priorities?
Yeah, so I really focus on how to make sure that I'm giving our senior leadership, I'll call it the COOs, the SVPs, the VPs, that manage the system. They're the ones that have to keep the lights on, right? We don't do policy work, right? Other organizations do that. We really focus on how the system operates. How do you keep the lights on with all these different pressures going on? So we always look for ways to bring those people together, and sometimes that's virtually, sometimes it's in person. We're actually hosting a meeting at the end of March in Colorado, where we've invited all of our member companies to send their senior executives, where they can spend a day and a half and actually get to know each other a little better. Um, a lot of the magic is around building trust, right? So it's one thing to shake hands and exchange phone numbers, but if you get a chance to chat around coffee or a drink or or whatever, you develop a little bit of a relationship with somebody, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I need to call so and so and find out what they're doing because we've got a new challenge that I know they've been working on already, right? So it's creating those opportunities to build those relationships. That's really what our focus is, and I think we get really good feedback. These guys love to come and talk with each other, and hopefully we're making the whole industry a little bit better by encouraging those kinds of exchanges.
Oh, yes. And as your organization, as one of the leaders, what's your challenge or call to action for the next generation of industry leaders who are just now becoming involved in the committees and workshops?
Good question. Um, I mean, I want to emphasize collaboration because we see such good things happening by this exchange. I know there's huge demands on their time, especially right now, given all the pressures in the industry. So for them to take a day or two or an hour or two to spend time in our meetings that offer this opportunity to learn from each other, I think it's a big thing. So I want to encourage them to not forget that that's an important um, opportunity for them to learn from each other.
Oh, wonderful. And yes, and one bonus question, where can people learn more about your group?
Yeah, well, the best place is to go to our website, and then that's aic.org, or the Ops Center has a separate website, AEIC Ops Center, Ops with an S, center.org. So there are two websites. It not only describes our organization and like which companies are on our board of directors at this time, but it also talks about our various events. And again, it's mostly focused on making sure utilities are aware of what we're doing, and we encourage them to contact us if they have any questions, want to learn more about what we're doing and why.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time to speak with me at USEA and highlight
You're
your
welcome.
organization's work. We value you as a member. And thank you to our listeners. If you are interested in learning more about USEA and joining so you can be featured on one of these interviews, please go to usca.org. Thank you.